So we're in the process of configuring our first OSPF system. Now we've configured Jack already, and he's broadcasting hello packets to all of the other routers that he can see, but no one's answering because no other routers are configured to answer for it. So let's go and configure Jake. Let's go to his console, and we're going to enter pretty much the same commands on Jake as we did on Jack. First we'll do show IP interface brief. Say I learned something from the last time. Now we'll do config T router OSPF 110. Now in this case we can create one large subnet mask, a class C, to include all three of these networks, the two on the fast Ethernet and the one on the serial. So we'll only have to enter two network statements, one for the 192.168 network and one for the 10.10.2 network. So first we'll do network 192.168.1.0 with a class C subnet mask, put it in area 0. We see that the loading process has already completed, so we have actually established a neighbor relationship immediately. It was just that fast. Now we'll do network 10.10.2.0, 0.0.0.255, put it in area 0 as well. Let's go ahead and write the config just to be on the safe side. And now that that's written, we can actually look over here on Jack. We get the same adjacency change message over here. So first, let's do show IP OSPF again. We'll see how many times the SPF algorithm has executed on this router. You see, SPF algorithm has executed 5 times because we entered 2 network commands over here on Jake, and so that triggered 2 more iterations of the SPF algorithm. It was last executed 14 seconds ago when we last entered that network command. So now if we do show IP route, we are now learning routes via OSPF. You'll notice by looking at the routing table that OSPF does not do auto-summarization by default. So you'll notice we don't have any summary routes or routes to null or anything like that. We just put the networks in OSPF and it just comes up and routes packets. Again, like any good IGP, if you configure it without much tuning, it will just come up and work. So we'll pause here, and I'm going to configure the other routers in the enterprise, again making a couple of mistakes here and there so that we can hone our troubleshooting skills. And we'll rejoin our lab once they are all configured. So here we are back again, and we've configured all of the routers in area 0 with a mistake that we'll find out here in a minute. And we look here on Jack, and we notice that the SPF algorithm has executed 12 times for every time I have added a network to my area 0 OSPF routing domain. So now let's examine the routing table. Show IP route. And we should have routes for all of these networks in here. So let's see. 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8. We're missing 6 and 7. Where are 6 and 7? 6 and 7's Rose and Dave. So we're not learning OSPF routes from Rose or Dave. So let's see what could possibly be the problem. You notice that Rose is spitting out messages on her console, so that's kind of cheating. But if we were to go over here to Jack and do show IP OSPF neighbors, we notice that we should have 4 neighbors, 1, 2, 3, 4 neighbors, and we only have 3. So obviously something's up. Let's look over here on Rose and see what she's saying. Received invalid packet, mismatch area ID from backbone area must be virtual link but not found on this interface. So what could possibly be the problem? Show run, begin with OSPF. So there's OSPF 110, and you'll notice that network 192.168.2.0 is in area 10 instead of area 1, and we made a bit of a typo there. So let's take this guy out of area 10 and put it in area 0, and that should fix our problem. So config T, router OSPF 110, we'll do no and paste that in there. Then we'll right click and we'll make that in area 0, and our adjacency should come up and establish. And it does. You'll notice that it establishes adjacencies with 4 and 5, but not with the other router on the link. And that's our designated router and backup designated router rearing its ugly head, or working as expected in this case. You notice that John also has established an adjacency with Rose. So now let's look over here on Jack, and we'll do show IP OSPF neighbor. And you'll notice that for all the routers on the 2 segment, we have 1 that it shows as a backup designated router and 2 that show as DR other, which means it's not a designated router or a backup designated router. So by looking at this, I can determine that my router, Jack, is the designated router. We can verify this by going to one of the other routers on that segment. Let's pick Jade and do a show IP OSPF neighbor. We see 10.10.4.1 is the designated router on IP address 192.168.2.1. We go over here to Jack. We do show IP OSPF. We see that 10.10.4.1 is our router ID. Our SPF algorithm is executed 14 times now because we've added 2 more networks. The networks on Rose and on Dave down here. So now we have OSPF fully implemented and it's giving out routes. We'll do show IP route just to make sure we know all of the routes on all of the networks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And of course there's all our 192.168.1s and the 192.168.2. So stay tuned. In the next video, we will implement multi-area OSPF.